What is good, chat? What is good? What is good? Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome back to the Open Gym. Well, everybody, it's been a couple of days since we've all learned the news that the Atlanta Hawks were involved in a three-team trade with the Dallas Mavericks and the Oklahoma City Thunder, sending the former number one overall pick, Zachary Risachere, to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Ryan Nemhard and Lou Dort, as well as sending Zach off. The Atlanta Hawks have sent a total of three second round picks to Oklahoma City and the Dallas Mavericks. The two going to Oklahoma City are the 2031 and 2032 second round picks, and the second round pick going to Dallas is the 2027 top 55 protected second round pick. So overall, three second round picks and Zachary Risachere heading out to Dallas and Oklahoma City in exchange for Lou Dort and Ryan Nemhard. Now, chat, I see the fan base is split 50-50. Um, Zach is a pretty polarizing player, in my opinion. Like I said, a former number one pick for the Hawks. He averaged 11 points, 3.7 rebounds, about 1.5 assists, 1.4 assists around there. In his 2 years in Atlanta, he shot 45% from the field, 36% from three, and 68% from the free throw line. Not typical stats that you would like to see from a typical number one overall pick, but I don't think Zachary Risachere was your typical number one pick. Um, Zach was drafted to a whole different roster in Atlanta. That roster was led by Trey Young and company. Jalen was still around, but Trey Young was leading the way for the Atlanta Hawks, and Zachary Risachere was looked to be a very big compliment to Trey Young in his game, and it showed his first year. The time he was able to play with Trey Young, his stats were pretty good, pretty similar to his career stats, but his stats were pretty decent, shooting a little bit better from three and overall from the field, but still around that 45 and 36% from three. So he had that career night against Brooklyn, that 38-point game, which everybody loved to see. He had a couple of breakout games, but that was just about it for Zach. Zach really couldn't scratch his ceiling in his time with Atlanta. So it's just unfortunate that Zach wasn't able to see better days with the Hawks. Like I said, he was drafted to a whole different organization, really, a whole different general manager, a whole different system. But now Hawks have a totally new direction. They have new leadership. So the direction may have changed for the Atlanta Hawks, and Zachary Risachere just might not have fit in the bigger picture for the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm not mad that Zach has to go. Am I a little hurt? Absolutely. It's been a couple days, chat. It has been a couple days since we've had um, the news broken to us. But overall, hindsight being 2020, I think this trade is going to be a good trade for everybody. I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to get a talent that a lot of people just weren't aware of because he did play in Atlanta. Atlanta didn't have too much success, and he did not have too much personal success, numbers wise or stats wise. So, obviously, I wouldn't call it disappointing, but some people would definitely call this number one pick experiment for Atlanta very disappointing. But overall, I really don't think there was any better option for Atlanta at that number one spot 2 years ago in that draft when they did get their number one shot. But in overall, you do have to look at the return for Atlanta. And I know it's just this trade, but Atlanta has acquired Aaron Wiggins, Lou Dort, Devin Carter, and Ryan Nemhard for Zachary Risachere and three second round picks, um, or maybe five. And that's a good return, man. That is a decent return for a number one pick who has underperformed very much so. He has underperformed. I think he has a better game than he has displayed in Atlanta. I think he can break out in Dallas. Maybe not all star, all NBA player, but I think he can be a significant role player for an NBA team. It's unfortunate that that wasn't Atlanta, and he just couldn't fit the vision. But it is what it is, and like I said, you have to look at the return, man. Atlanta gets Lou Dort. Lou averages the very similar numbers as Zach: 11 points, 3.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists, shooting 40% from the field, 35 from three, on 78% from the free throw line. His best year, he averaged 17 points with OKC, 4 rebounds, and 1.7 assists on 84% shooting from the free throw line. Shooting from the field and the three was pretty similar to his career shooting splits. But Lou Dort adds a totally different aspect to this Atlanta Hawks team. Atlanta looks to be buying into that defensive mindset. I know a lot of people are worried about the offensive inconsistencies that might be on display when Lou Dort is on the floor with maybe Dyson Daniels. In particular, maybe when Mo Gay gets back, still somebody who can't necessarily quite space the floor consistently. But honestly, we'll look to see if those players develop and they can start hitting shots from the perimeter and help out Atlanta and make this vision a little smoother. But Lou Dort comes in um, on a 1 year deal. OKC, long story short, just couldn't pay the man. They were very much near the tax and they just did not want to pay that. So Lou Dort is coming to Atlanta pretty much for 2 second round picks. That's about it. And that's a good stab in the dark, honestly. Atlanta has a good shot at repeating their success last year, and as a success, I want success, overall success is to win a championship. To some folks, I'm just along for the ride, man. I'm along for the ride, and whatever happens, happens. And I can't be lie. I can't lie. I really do think this is going to be, like I said, a repeat of last year, maybe top five, top six finish for the Atlanta Hawks, which is a move in the right direction, in my opinion. If we can go further into the playoffs, that'll be great. And I think this addition will help Atlanta very much so. Um, and kind of like I was saying, that 1 year deal is important because I believe Nemhard is on a 1 year deal. Lou Dort is on a 1 year deal. CJ McCollum is on a 1 year deal. Jock Landale is on a 1 year deal. And Mo Gay is on a 1 year deal. So that leaves Atlanta plenty of options if they want to maybe explore the trade market come trade deadline time. So when that time comes, Atlanta's gonna have plenty to offer other teams. They have the cap space. I believe if they go into next year, they have about $40 to $50 million in cap space to spend on maybe a disgruntled player with their team, whoever wants to leave their city. Maybe they can offer them some change to come play with Jalen. And it depends on the level of player that Atlanta will need, honestly. Atlanta will have some work to do on the roster, obviously, before the season starts. Because with these moves, it's 17 of 15 roster spots um, filled out for Atlanta. So there'll have to be some moves made before the season starts. But after kind of the season starts, and I would probably say halfway through or 3 quarters of the way through, Atlanta will probably tell where Jalen Johnson is sitting development wise. If he takes another leap, and honestly, if he repeats what he does in the regular season and continues that into the postseason, I think we obviously will have a number one option. I think a lot of people have questioned Jalen's abilities, maybe his talents. Wouldn't say effort, but I don't think that's quite correct in my opinion. I think Jalen is on his way to becoming one of the top 15 players in this league. So In my opinion, I think Jalen is progressing fine. If he takes this next step next year and kind of shows a little more leadership and ability to kind of take over a game, I think he is going to be on his way to being a household name for sure, if he isn't already. And that's going to open the door for a lot because if he takes that step and he becomes the number one, then Atlanta doesn't have to go out and search for a number one. I think they can maybe let CJ go into the sunset if that's what he chooses. He signed a 1 year deal. Like I said, multiple options to during the for the trade market. So if the Hawks decide to trust Jalen, give him the keys ultimately, let him be the true number one. They don't have to go search for that number one. They can search for a 1B. I think their options might be a little slim next year for a superstar. I don't think we're gonna get too many options, but yeah, the Hawks have plenty of decisions because, like I just described, they have that decision of are we really gonna trust Jalen, give him the keys, and that's the move, or are we gonna try to land a bigger star with a trade, or maybe the money at the next year's offseason will give us with these players' contracts expiring. So it gives Atlanta a lot to do, but it'll be interesting. These aren't going to be the only moves to be made, in my opinion. I think there's a little logjam at the guard spot for Atlanta, which isn't always a bad thing, especially with the young talent that Atlanta has acquired. They have Devin Carter, who I believe is about 23, 24, if I'm not mistaken. They got Ryan Nemhard, obviously Nikhil Alexander Walker, um, CJ McCollum. They have Dyson Daniels. They drafted Kingston Flemings. So they have plenty of depth at the guard spot. But I'm sure one or two might not be on the final roster. And I forgot they have acquired Aaron Wiggins as well from the Thunder for second round picks as well. So plenty of decisions to be made, and that's why I can't really give this roster a final grade, but I can give this trade a B minus in my opinion because for Atlanta it just gives them depth of defense. That perimeter defense is going to be a torture chamber. They no pun intended with the torture chamber, but that defense is going to be impeccable with Lou Dyson. I know there was a graphic floating around social media that showed Nikhil wasn't as great on defense this year as he usually is. His defensive impact wasn't as strong, but in my opinion, he did with the eye test. He was playing decent defense. Did get caught slipping, but that's neither here nor there. But good defense, played the passing lanes pretty well, did what he needed to do for the scheme. But overall, Atlanta has a lot more strength to. They didn't go height, which a lot of people were thinking the Atlanta Hawks were lacking height, which they kind of are still, and they were. But they kind of chose players with a mentality they can guard, you know, three through five, 1 through 5. Honestly, some of these guys, um, and they really went with hustle and defensive ability over height. So I think that's gonna be a big factor for Atlanta. It'll give them a chance to offer different looks, and like I said, offensively, it's gonna be a question to see if Lou and Dyson can space the floor consistently. Cool kid, JJ, what is good? Welcome to the Open Gym, brother. We are just breaking down the Zachary Risacher trade. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Hawks can space the floor and keep the ball moving with those two on the floor. I know a lot of folks have concerns that the ball is gonna get stuck with Dyson out there, but I think that's downplaying Dyson's ability. I think Dyson does a good job at somewhat facilitating. It looks a lot different than a traditional point guard. It does. But when he's driving downhill, driving kicks, it's it's money for the Hawks offense. When he's playing off the ball, he plays very well. Keeps the floor, keeps the defenders guessing, keeps them on their feet, overplaying sometimes. The only downfall is they won't play up on that 3 point line if he's not shooting, or at least just shooting, just getting the shots up. So, like I said, Dyson's gonna have to take a leap this year. I'm sure that's every NBA player's goal, but it'll just have to be shown consistently if Atlanta wants to have success this year. And overall, I think Ryan Nemhard, like I said, there's 17 or 15 roster spots, man, and you can't have that. So I'm just interested to see who is on the final roster for Atlanta. Could be Aaron Wiggins, could be Ryan Nemhard and Aaron Wiggins. Um, Devin Carter. So we'll have to see what Atlanta Hawks do in that aspect to get that roster to 15. But overall, it's just sad to see Zach go. To recap, it's just sad to see Zach go. But I guess the NBA is a business, and I guess the Hawks wanted to sell as high as possible, even though around the league everybody looks to see Zach's market as sort of low. So you got to give credit to the Hawks. They had a decision to make whether they wanted to extend Zach's contract or, find Zach a new place to play. And they elected to find Zach a new place to play. And I'm not mad. It is what it is. Best of luck to Zach in Dallas. And the Hawks receive Lou Dort and Ryan Nemhard. So we'll see who is on that final roster for Atlanta. But I'm excited. Lou Dort, like I said, adds another layer to your Hawks team. Ryan, like I said, I don't know who's going to be on the team, so I can't get too excited about, Ryan Nemhard, Devin Carter, Aaron Wiggins. But it's really good to have those type of players on the team. So we'll see what the Hawks decide to do and when they do it. We'll probably go live when they do to react to that. But yeah, chat, just wanted to tap in, give y'all my thoughts about the ZACCHARIE RISACHER trade to Dallas for Lou Dort and Ryan Nemhard. So I appreciate everybody that tuned in, everybody that tapped in, hit the sub, follow, and subscribe button. I greatly appreciate y'all. If you haven't, go ahead and do that. It helps the channel greatly, so I greatly appreciate y'all if y'all do. So I'll catch y'all tomorrow early. So I appreciate everybody who tuned in. Y'all have a great night, and I'll see y'all later.